In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a heads-up display for your game to display information on screen for the user, for the player. What I have here is a very simple game with a cube sitting on a plane. The cube has character physics, and there's just very simple logic down here. When I press the space bar, the cube jumps like that. Okay, so I'm going to press numpad 0 to get out my camera and kind of move up here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come on to the Z-axis and pan over here a little bit. And I'm going to add a camera. You can't see the camera, but let me drag this over. Here's my new camera right there. All right, I'm going to rename this HUD camera right now, HUD, HUD for heads-up display. If I select this, I can go to view, set active object as camera to see what it looks like in the camera. Or I can do the same thing with the shortcut, which is control numpad 0. So this will allow me to switch between the two cameras. So if I want to switch back to this camera, I could just click on it and press control numpad 0. If I want to switch to this one, I can just press control numpad 0. All right. I'm going to add some text to my screen to display the number of jumps. One thing we really haven't touched on is the 3D cursor. What the 3D cursor does is it allows me to kind of click where I want to create new objects. So if I click here, it'll allow me to create new objects here. So if I wanted to add a new text, it'll create it right here. So I'm going to move this over a little bit right here. If I go into my camera, I'm way zoomed in, so I gotta drag this up. What does this look like? Oh, actually the camera's in front of the text. So if I press GZ, drag this camera up a little bit, and now I could see my text. I could zoom out more. If I press GZZ, two Z's, that'll let me dolly the camera and pull up a little bit to make the text a little bit smaller. And I have to think about this. This is my screen. This is going to overlay on top of my game. So I have to kind of lay out the text where I want it. Maybe I just want it down here in the corner. I'm going to tab to edit the text. I'm going to call this jumps and display the number of jumps that we've done so far. So how can we do this? How can we update this text? What we need to do is we actually need to add a text game property. And this will allow us to change the text over here using actuators. We also need to keep track of the jumps. And there's different ways to do this. We could keep track of the jumps on our, oh, where are we at? Cube. Or we could just keep track of the jumps over here on the text. So I'm just going to put this here on the text to make it easy. I'm just going to call it jumps. I'm going to make this an integer with 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add logic to this jumps. Actually, I can add complex logic here, so that whenever I press the space bar to make the cube jump, maybe I also want to update the property add 1 to jumps. So how do we update the text then? Well, we do the same thing. We use a property actuator. We say the text, and here's where we can use a little bit of Python logic. We can actually create a string in quotation marks, say like jumps, colon, quotation marks again, double quotes. Then we could type a plus, and then the name of our property, jumps. So this will create a new string. It'll concatenate the word jumps with the number stored in the property jumps. I can link that up here. All right, so I could test this out right now, just in this view. So if I press P for play, my cube's jumping off screen, but you can see my jumps is incrementing. That reminds me though, I need a light here. So I'm going to add a new light. I'm going to make this a point light, make it 1,000 watts. That's kind of the default brightness for light. And I'm going to move this up. That should be fine. Yeah, that's pretty bright. All right. So then how do we overlay that onto the screen? I'm going to click on this camera back here, control numpad 0 to make this my default camera. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add logic here always. And then I'm going to add, it's not scene, it is collection. So collection will allow us to actually add an overlay collection. In order to do that though, what we need to do is add these objects, my text and my light, to a new collection. So up here in the corner, there's a little box that says new collection. I'm going to call this HUD for heads up display. I'm going to drag my text and my light. I can call this HUD light. I can call this jumps text. And then so with this logic here, what I can do is I can select the HUD and say I want to add an overlay collection. Now I need to specify a camera for this. So I'm going to use the HUD camera that I created that's pointing at my overlay collection. All right. So if I press P for play, we have our HUD down in the corner. We have our cube here. When I jump, my HUD updates. Now I might have to work on fixing the bugs on this because it still increments even if the cube's in the air. But that's the basics of creating a heads-up display. Heads-up displays can be used to display all sorts of information that's important for your player to know. Score, number of lives, a map, an inventory if you think about games like Minecraft, or like a skills you can execute, stuff like that. So that concludes this video. Thanks for watching and happy blending.